What you're looking at is an incantation bowl, one of several hundred examples discovered in Mesopotamia dating somewhere between the 500s and 700 CE. They're typically shallow clay bowls around the size of a cereal bowl. And as you can guess from the name incantation bowls, they're covered in magical formulas intended to ward off demons or protect against misfortune. These incantations usually start from the rim and spiral inward toward the center, where you'll often find a little drawing of a demon, sometimes tied up in chains, symbolizing what the bowl will do to the demon. Some of these demon drawings specifically seem to depict and target a female demon, while many are familiar with the story of Adam and Eve. The lesser-known thread in medieval Jewish folklore popularized the idea that Eve was not Adam's first wife, but rather he was initially paired with a demonic figure named Lilith. But who exactly was Lilith? Where did this idea come from? And what about her compelled these communities to resort to magic to protect themselves against her? Traces of the character Lilith stretch as far back as 4,000 years ago in ancient Mesopotamian demonology. The name Lilith itself probably derives from the Sumerian word Lael, most often translated as wind or spirit, and the Akkadian words Lelu and Lidu, a class of male and female demons, respectively, though very little is known about how these beings were understood in ancient Mesopotamia. Ancient Akkadian medical texts blame Lelu-type demons for all sorts of diseases and physical conditions. Generally in these texts, these demons victimize people of the opposite sex, Lelu attacking women, Lidu attacking men. For example, one medical text attributes Caesar-like symptoms to Lelu and Lidu. First, it describes the symptoms. If when a state of confusion comes over him, he rolls the whites of his eyes and blood flows from his nose. Then the text offers an explanation for the symptoms for a woman, Lelu for a man, L2. In other words, these demons are causing the problem. Another text blames them for fevers if when it afflicts him, he continually cries out, "My insides." By insides he opens and shuts his eyes. He has fever, the tips of his fingers and toes are cold, and if you try to make that patient talk, he does not answer it. Attributes the symptoms to the hand of Lelu. Other ancient Mesopotamian texts suggest that Lelu demons were believed to be the unhappy ghosts of young men and women who died prematurely and thus doomed to wander the earth unfulfilled. These texts especially focus on young women who died before having sex or died before having kids, and thus they terrorize young men in this limbo state. One text reads, "Our lie slips in a man's window, young girl not fated to be married, young woman who was never impregnated, young woman whose garment pin a good man never loosened." The Arlai mentioned here are maiden lily, apparently were a type of unhappy wandering spirit associated with negative sexuality. Here, the reference to the demonic figure slipping in through a man's window suggests that they were considered a type of succubus, a female demon who seduces and traps and has sex with men while they're asleep. The scholar Alice Z argues that these demons were demonic personifications of sexual envy, the unhappy ghosts of people who never found sexual satisfaction while alive. So it follows that the ritual strategy to deal with these spirits was to perform a symbolic marriage rituals called for making figurines of a male and female Lilith demon and then performing a marriage between the two figurines. The aim of this ritual is to cause the Twatamans to lose interest in their human victims in the past. Scholars argued that the so-called Burni relief, a Babylonian representation of a female divine figure, actually depicts Idu. However, most now believe that it's probably Ishtar or some other goddess. Notice how we've been talking about a type or category of demon, not a single entity named Lilith. This holds true for most of her history. Only in later Jewish traditions does Lilith begin to crystallize as a distinct character with her own narrative. But even in this early phase, there are named figures that seem to have influenced the later development of the singular figure Lilith. An epic poem called Gilgamesh and the Hupu tree, which dates to around 2000 BCE, seems to refer to a female demon named Lel, though scholars dispute the translation. What's more widely accepted is that Lilith was inspired by the Mesopotamian demonic goddess Lashu, known for attacking infants and women during childbirth. Archaeologists have discovered dozens of amulets from ancient Mesopotamia designed to protect people from Lashu. She's often depicted with animal and human features, sometimes with a lion or bird's head covered in feathers with talons for feet. Many of the incantations specifically highlight the threat that she presents sense to birthing mothers and newborns. An old Assyrian Lashu incantation regarding stillbirth says she is fierce, fearsome, divine. The daughter of Anu is a she-wolf. She intercepts the running youth. She utterly smashes the tiny ones. So in this earliest layer of Lilith's history, we find a strong focus on the dangers of childbirth and infancy, which were among the most dangerous phases of life in antiquity, though reconstructing precise stats from antiquity is challenging. The astrologist Jonathan Vull estimates that infant mortality was around 20–30% in the pre-modern period. Maternal mortality undoubtedly was high as well. Lelu demons and Lashu arose to personify these deep-seated fears, embodying anxieties about the most vulnerable people in the most perilous moments of human existence, and Lilith in later Jewish mythology appears to be a composite of these figures and anxieties, blurring the baby-snatching role of Lashu with the negative sexuality of the ghostly Lelu spirits. So how do we go from ancient Mesopotamian demonology to Lilith as we know her today in ancient Jewish mythology? The story of Lilith as Adam's first wife actually has no basis. In the Hebrew Bible, the word Lilith does appear in the Hebrew Bible, but only once. A single mention in Isaiah 34. In this chapter, the God of Israel wreaks vengeance on the neighboring kingdom of Edom, turning it into a wasteland. Verse 14 paints a picture of the devastation, a desolate land inhabited only by wild animals and demonic creatures. Wild cats shall meet with hyenas, goat demons shall call to each other, there also Lilith shall repose and find a place to rest. The text doesn't offer any more detail. Apparently the audience knew enough about Lilith that the author didn't need to, but reading between the lines, Lilith seems to be a wilderness demonist of some sort, or at least a demon who's comfortable hanging out in a barren wasteland, but the actual translation here is disputed. Some scholars argue that the word Lilith here is not the proper name of a specific demon, but like the Lily-2 of ancient Mesopotamia, refers to a type or class of demon, and thus should be translated as the Lilith lowercase l. Others argue that Isaiah 34:14 doesn't refer to a demon at all, but rather some sort of nocturnal creature or bird like an owl. We see this disagreement play out in different translations of the NIV translates the word as night creatures, the ESV nightbird, and the KJV is screech owl, though the NRSV translation generally reflects the majority position among scholars, and it's worth mentioning that the supernatural translation caught on very early. When the Hebrew Bible was translated into Greek, the ancient Greek translators rendered the word Lilith as a type of centaur, and the Latin translation of the verse translated Lilith as Lamia, a baby-killing monster in Greco-Roman mythology. So while there is a great deal of uncertainty about this passage today, at least in antiquity, this verse was assumed to refer to a supernatural creature of some sort, if not a demon specifically. So throughout the Bronze and Iron Ages, we get glimpses of a type of child-killing, anti-fertility, anti-maternal female demon, sometimes conceptualized as a singular entity like Lashu. This figure finds its way into the demonology of Second Temple Judaism. For example, Lilith specifically and Liliths generically appear in the Dead Sea Scrolls. For example, check out this exorcistic hymn, "And I the sage sound the majesty of his beauty to terrify and confound all the spirits of destroying angels and the bastard spirits, the demons and Lilith." Here God is called upon to ward away a parade of evil spirits. Bastard spirits is likely a reference to the offspring of angels and humans, as described in the book of Enoch. Lilith makes an appearance as a singular entity, but with little detail revealing how she was conceptualized by the Dead Sea Scrolls community. Other scrolls show that some ancient Jews continue to view Lilith as a type of demon as well. For example, if you look up Isaiah 34:14 in the Great Isaiah Scroll found at Qumran, you'll find the plural Lilith, which suggests a generic category of demon rather than a specific being. But we don't have much more evidence from this period. She becomes a much bigger deal in the early centuries of Rabbi Judaism. The Babylonian Talmud mentions Lilith on several occasions where she's conceptualized as a humanoid female demon with wings and long hair. One rabbi even proposes banning people from sleeping alone at night, warning that anyone who sleeps alone in a house will be seized by Lilith. But she wasn't just a concern for the rabbis. Let's return to those incantation bowls. This is a body of evidence showing that Jewish communities in Mesopotamia recognized her as a demonic foe in everyday life, leading them to develop ritual strategies to nullify her. Now different religious communities used incantation bowls like Mandans and Christians, but most of these bowls were composed in Babylonian Jewish Aramaic, and we see a ton of overlap between rabbinic texts in these bowls. Not only do they date to around the same time that the Talmud was completed, but rabbis may have been the ritual specialists who helped to compose the incantations. Many of them were found in what's now south-central Iraq. A large and vibrant Jewish community must have lived there in late antiquity, who apparently turned to these incantation bows as a way to battle Lilith. Many of these formulas are symbolic divorce papers, in which the practitioner divorces from a Lilith. One reads, "This is the deed of divorce of the Lilith. Lilith's male Lilith and female Lilith, you are stripped naked, your mother is the Lilith Pal-Hadad, go out from the house and from the dwelling, and from the body of this Horm son of Imma, and from his wife. From this text we can learn a few things. Presumably a guy named Horms was concerned about Lilith demons, so he commissioned this bowl to protect his house, himself and his wife. The symbolic divorce papers mention Liliths generically, which continues to refer to a species of demon and not a specific figure. In fact, in this incantation there is a Lilith with the name the Lilith Pal-Hadad, much like how other demons in Jewish and Christian mythology have specific names like Bel or Asadas. But we also learned that Lilith were believed to be male or female, which harkens back to Bronze and Iron Mesopotamia with Lelu and Lichu demons, though the scholar Nama Vazni argues that the sex of Lilith demons is often ambiguous. They could transform depending on who they victimize. A Jewish incantation bull explicitly says this is an amulet against the Lilith that haunt the house of this Ephra, who do violence and trample and scourge and mutilate, who appear to humans, to men in the likeness of women and to women in the likeness of men, with the formula I written against the evil Lith, whatsoever name be thine. So again, this guy Ephra who commissioned this object assumes that Lilith are a species of demon that presumably shapeshift. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground so far in this video, from ancient Mesopotamia up through the early centuries of Rabbi Judaism. And over the course of 2,500 years, we see surprising consistency in the belief in demonic figures known for killing babies or sexually victimizing people. But notice something that's completely missing from all of this evidence: the whole notion that Lilith was the first wife of Adam is absent. Where did this come from? This myth emerges in the early medieval period, first appearing in the alphabet of Ben Sira, an anonymous Jewish text dating somewhere between the 8th century up to the year 1000. The text expands on the Garden of Eden story found in Genesis. In the text, God creates Lilith out of the dust of the earth just like Adam, but she challenges Adam's authority. Specifically, she refuses to be on the bottom during sex. She says because they're both made from the same earth they are equals. When Adam refuses to let her on top, she pronounces the ineffable 4-letter name of God and flies away to the Red Sea. 3 angels pursue her to bring her back, but she stands her ground after they threaten to drown her. She says, "Leave me, I was created only to cause sickness to infants." So here we see a mythical explanation for why she's associated with child killing. We next see a mythical justification to use anti-Lilith amulets. The angel and Lilith eventually reach a settlement with her, swearing that she will spare infants that wear an amulet over. All Lilith in the alphabet of Benser is an evil, defiant anti-mother, killing human babies while at the same time birthing hundreds of demonic babies. So where did this legend come from? Well, it obviously draws on previous ideas that Lilith or Lilith in general are responsible for killing infants and associated with negative sexuality as a succubus, requiring symbolic divorce papers to remove her evil presence from your life. But the notion that she was Adam's wife seems to emerge from a perceived plot hole in the book of Genesis. Scholars have long recognized that there are 2 creation stories in Genesis, and thus 2 accounts of the creation of humanity. Genesis 1 simply says, "So God created humans in his image, male and female, he created them," while in Genesis 2, it says, "Then the Lord God formed man out of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life," followed by the whole story of God creating Eve out of Adam's rib while he sleeps. Some Jewish scholars must have recognized that these are 2 creation myths and attempted to harmonize them by saying that they describe the creation of 2 different women, the first being Lilith and the second being Eve. I'd argue that this version of Lilith is the best known version to modern audiences, but her identity continued to evolve in Jewish mythology in the following centuries. Later in the medieval period, she became very prominent in the Jewish mystical tradition known as Kabbalah. Now there are several myths about Lilith in Kabbalistic texts, but one notable mythological development is to pair her with the evil figure Samael, a somewhat similar figure to Satan in Christianity. In this mythological narrative, Sam is not a second husband after Adam, but rather her original primordial mate. In the words of the scholar of Jewish mysticism Joseph Dan, this created a kind of parallelism between Adam and Eve and Lilith. But perhaps the most dramatic transformation in her history happened not all that long ago. In the 20th century, it was rebranded from a malevolent figure to one worthy of respect, a second-wave feminist icon symbolizing independence, defiance and empowerment. In 1976, a group of Jewish women founded a magazine that aimed to be a Jewish alternative to secular feminist publications, with a mission to amplify Jewish feminist voices and to be a feminist change maker in and for Jewish communities. They decided to name the magazine Lilith, in the words of one of the founders, Susan Wiedemann Schneider. The cover of the first issue featured our artist version of the Jewish superwoman, who managed to amalgamate almost all possible roles, an expecting mother, scholar, doctor and server of chicken soup, balancing it all on a tight rope while wearing a fancy dress in that first issue. They address the Lilith question: why choose the name Lilith as Lilith, a model for Jewish women? They conceptualized her not as a wild-haired vengeful witch, but as a powerful female figure who radiates strength, assertiveness, and refuses to cooperate in her own victimization, some of the very qualities that defined her as wicked in the alphabet of Benser. Her independence and refusal to submit were reclaimed as positive traits by the end of the 20th century. This feminist rebrand of Lilith made its way outside of Jewish communities and found a new home, especially in contemporary pagan circles. Do a quick YouTube search and you'll find contemporary witches publishing how-to guides on how to work with Lil in one's daily ritual practice. And this positive reinterpretation might be reflected in broader American society as well, because the name Lilith has skyrocketed in popularity since the early 2010s. According to the biggest baby name websites, Lilith was around the 900th most popular name for girls in 2010 and jumped to the 270th most popular name by 2022. So for most of her 4,000 years of history, Lilith was an unambiguously malevolent figure. Dangerous specifically to women, but here in the 21st century we're witnessing an ironic twist in her narrative. Lilith has proven not only to be a surprisingly enduring character, but also a malleable character reshaped to resonate with contemporary audiences. Thank you for joining us on this riveting journey, where we delve deep into the enigmas that challenge the boundaries of the known world. We hope you've enjoyed uncovering the secrets of the unexplained with us, and we're just getting started. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share our videos to stay up to date with the latest investigations and discoveries. Until next time, remember, the world is full of mysteries waiting to be uncovered. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep believing.